We settle in for our daily practice. Hmm. So you've already been invited to settle into your space, but maybe just take a breath to arrive. My friend, Rabbi Ryan Lesnar, who I work with here, says, was speaking to a speech therapist who was saying, you always say, take a breath as if you should take an inhale, but actually what helps us relax, according to this perspective, is actually taking an exhale together. So maybe take an extended exhale. See if that helps you arrive and let your system settle. The Parsha this week is Parshat Pinchas, and it's often the most read section in the Torah because it has the maftir portions for lots of holidays and Rosh Chodesh. The maftir is the final reading that we read on Shabbat and holidays, not from the weekly section, but that is special for the time of year that we're in. And our parsha contains all the sacrifices that happen daily, monthly, and on all the special holidays. So I know our Torah scroll here at Congregation Dar Chenom, we're privileged to have more than one Torah scroll. We don't have to keep scrolling back and forth to Pinchas. But the Torah that we have open to Pinchas is in need of repair because we read that section so often. Uh, it's a reminder for me as I share this that I need to take it into the Sofer, to the scribe near here. But also just sharing this as an invitation before a short teaching to think to yourself in your practice, what is the section of your scroll that is most rolled to? What is a bookmark for yourself in your own practice? Right? Are there thoughts that you keep returning back to? Are there familiar sensations that you might notice? Oh, yep, you're at the 5 minute mark where my foot falls asleep, or my knee starts tingling. Or here's the moment of clarity and quiet that come if I've actually sat in stillness for 10 minutes. What's your own Parshat Pinchas? Those places that you return. And as you reflect on that, I want to just drop in another pasuk, verse, and teaching from this week's Parsha, which I once heard on a retreat from Rabbi Jordan Ben Dadapel, and he framed it as the most important verse for mindfulness practice. It's like, and it's based on this midrash, this teaching from the Ein Yaakov, which is a collection of Aggadic teachings, the non-legal teachings from the Talmud. I'll say more about that in a second. But in the introduction, there's this beautiful midrash about some rabbis discussing what is the most inclusive verse in the Torah. What little piece of Torah summarizes or includes or is a microcosm for what we're talking about when we're talking about Torah and wisdom. And the first rabbi gets up, Ben Zoma says, well, that's easy. Obviously, the most important comprehensive pasuk is the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. We say it before we die. We say it before we go to sleep. It's the most important verse, obviously. Another rabbi gets up and says, no, no, a more comprehensive verse is what's really at the core of that idea of the Shema. If you can understand that everything is one, then that really fills your heart with love and ahava. And the most comprehensive pasuk is ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your fellow like yourself. But then, of course, another rabbi gets up and says, no, no, no. Even more comprehensive than that is a pasuk from this week's from Parshat Pinchas, which is את הכבש אחד תעשה בבוקר, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין הערביים. One sheep you should offer in the morning, and the second sheep you should offer in the afternoon. And somebody gets up in the Beit Midrash where this discussion is happening and says, yes, that last option, that's the most important. That's the most inclusive. That's a little bit surprising, this verse about daily sacrifices. Why is that the most inclusive? Why does that include the ideas of oneness and connection, the idea of loving each other, caring for each other? As Rabbi Jordan explained to me, and as still stays with me, it's a verse that's about our practice. It's about holding sacred space for doing the work that allows ourselves to feel connected, that allows ourselves to care. It's this time that we're carving out today for daily practice, that the daily sit reminds us is so important. When we're actually able to create holy habits, that's what allows for Torah and wisdom to flow through in our lives and connects with others. I want to say that I also just love the context of where this comes from, that I mentioned before from this book of Ein Yaakov. There were, you may have heard of the Talmud, which is a core piece of our rabbinic teaching. And the Talmud is a grab bag of all sorts of different things. There's a lot of legal sections that are about what to do. And there's also non-legal sections, the Agadah, that has stories and folklore and advice for how to live your life. And some people took all of the legal sections, they created codes. They just focused on what to do. Some people, like the Ein Yaakov, took just the stories and advice and said, let's just look at those. But there's something that's core in our practice and probably just core in our lives that we need both of those strands. We need to know what's to do. And we also need Seida Derech. We need nourishment for our lives that provide us with meaning, that inspire us to live well. And it feels like in the introduction to the Ein Yaakov, that's ostensibly about these non-legal pieces. We actually need to have frameworks for practicing, working in the world, and being inspired and connected. So my blessing for all of us as we move into our practice together is that we keep finding spaces and opportunities to return to our practice, return to our breath, right? Perhaps noticing the scales. There's the offering of the morning and the offering of the evening. But to me, that feels resonant with the in-breath, which is like a moment of morning, the out-breath, which is a moment of evening. Starting again, finding moments, returning to our frameworks, returning to those well-rolled sections of the Torah, the bookmarks that we place in our experience that help us experience divinity and the lives that we actively lead. That help us start together, start again together. So I want to just encourage us to remember our posture as we move into some time of silence. Notice your breath moving through. Notice if there is any place of connection with any of the words that I shared. Maybe express some gratitude. and then move on to this moment. What is the experience now? Find a comfortable stretch in your back that connects you upwards. Feel grounded in your body. Notice what you're sitting on that connects you down to the earth. Remember to be open to what's moving through in this moment. Gratitude for making this time today. Maybe finding a place of commitment to return regularly to this practice. We'll sit together in silence until 12:57, and I'll call us back together with a short chant of shalom. Have a beautiful sit. Shalom. 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 Thank you all for your practice.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Aaron Rotenberg, guiding us beautifully today. And let's seal that practice by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, as always, we ask you please stay present for a moment to support those who are. You can put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat now or after you recite Kaddish. And thanks to Anmol, who'll share the words of the Kaddish on the screen. And if you're joining me, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Buchdahl, Hashamay Rabbi, Yama, Tibra, Kibate, Yamlich, Malute, Chayechon, Yomechon, Chaye, Bechol, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Bisman, Kariv, V'imru, Amen. Hey Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Olam Ulamei Amaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitale, V'yithalal, Shemei Tekudshah, B'richu, Ha'ela Mikol, Rechata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, V'amiram Ba'alma, V'imru, Shlama Rabba B'Shemaya, Chaim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Shalom
Shalom
B'Mamah, Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael, V'Yakol Yisrael, V'imru.
Yaakov Yishmael. Yaakov Yoshe Tevel. Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, hope you'll join us tomorrow. Allison Cohen will be leading our practice tomorrow. Just a reminder for those who joined us a little bit late that this week we'll be meeting Monday through Thursday. No live sit on Friday, but also a reminder that all our sessions are live streamed on our YouTube channel. All the recordings are posted there. We have, I think, over 1,500 meditations now on our YouTube channel, as well as all the yoga studio sessions. So if you miss any sessions or there's a day where we're not meeting live, you can always make use of our resources to support you in your Jewish spiritual practice. And please make use of that. So you are also welcome to continue to sit with that beautiful guidance offered today by Rabbi Aaron Rotenberg, or join us for a conversation. And if you have a question you'd like to ask, you can put that in the chat, write question, all in caps in the chat. I'll try to work your question into our conversation. And let's bring you in, Aaron. And thank you so much. That was really wonderful. I loved and appreciated what you did with the Sefer Torah scroll and Parshat Pinchas, and the whole idea of that section of our the scroll of our lives that we come back to, and that it's like I experienced that both as bringing attention to a part that we come back to again and again for nourishment and practice. But also, it was interesting because you noted that because it's used so often, it needs repair. I just love the juxtaposition of being drawn to a section or an aspect of practice that we revisit frequently, and also reminds us of the need for repair. So that alone was worth the price of admission, which of course is free, but still, it was good. It was great. So I want to explore a little bit what you offered in terms of that verse from the Parsha, which is, for those of you who want to check it out, it's Numbers 28, verse 4, about the keves, about the lamb that's offered in the morning and offered in the evening, which is the tamid, the constant, the consistent offering. So what I got from that, tell me if I'm wrong, or just, I want you to elaborate on that Ein Yaakov teaching on it, was basically that it's a teaching about the centrality of ongoing practice, right? Um, and morning and evening, and also it has that special, the phrase "bein ha'arbayim," between evening at the dusk time, the liminal time of the day, when there's change happening, when we notice, which you brought our attention to the flow of the breath, and I really love the idea of the inhalation being the morning, the exhalation being the evening, and then exploring that space in between. So here's the question after that long wind up here is the necessity of both keva, of something that's fixed, a fixed practice. This is what came up for me from your teaching, that we get from that verse and from the commentary around it, the idea of the importance of having a consistency and dedication of ongoing practice, but that's not enough. That we also have to have kavanah, intention, and fill that form, or that with meaning and freshness and newness in some way. So did I hear that right, or is that just my take on that? Is that part of what you were trying to communicate?
You heard that very right. And it's beautifully stated and expounded on here. And yeah, I appreciate this question about keva and consistency and kavana, the intention that gives life to things. And there is something in this teaching that feels like it's leaning into the keva piece of our lives, that we need consistency. That idea of the tamid that you mentioned, which I'm sure has come up in these spaces before, that it's sometimes translated as eternal, but probably more accurately means continual. Right? As we think about candles that need to be lit, you need to refill the oil and need to refill our tanks, so to speak, again and again. But there is something personally in my life that I actually find it hard to do consistency in this ongoing way. But actually have it with our mindfulness practice. I think that when I started, I had the sense, oh yes, this is the thing. I need to, and I think I do receive this instruction that like should sit every day for the rest of your life. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And what's been coming up for me more is it's okay to shift practices. It's okay to have a practice that you do for a certain period of time. I heard this teaching in the name of Reb Zalman Jack Shalomi, who got it from a Hasidic teacher I should know, but basically said, if you want to incorporate something into your personhood and body, you need to do it for 40 days. So for me, that feels right. There's many periods of 40 days that come up in our tradition. Moses for 40 days on Mount Sinai, Noah in the ark for 40 days. You need to make that practice your ark, so to speak, and stick to it for a certain amount of time, and then see how it goes, and then be open to trying other things. So that's, I think, currently where I'm sitting with Keva and Kavanah, that you need both, but there also needs to be some discernment for when to ease up on the Keva to make sure that there's space for new intention to flow through.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate, I love that teaching, and appreciate that. It's also making me think about that there isn't necessarily a duality of keva and kavanah, which, just to translate those again, keva means fixed, kavanah means intention. And also there's a parallel there with, I think you made this about halakha, about Jewish law, which is fixed. and Agadah in Jewish sacred literature, which is, kind of uh, exegetical and, kind of it has a parallel to Kabbalah, I think, but that they are intertwined, right? You don't just like jump back and forth between the two, but what we're striving for is integrated so that, for example, if the keva is not working, you need to change up the keva, right? Or adjust the keva in some way to do that. So it's a really great, I think, guidance in general for what we're describing here as this mindfulness practice, which is to say, yeah, we do the same thing. Those many people here are here every day or most days, and we're sitting, we're breathing, we're paying attention, we're etc. Um, but we also need to keep it fresh, and there's something else going on that maintains the newness of it, even as we're doing something for a period of time. Like it's really interesting. 40 days, like I'm thinking about like, well, if I do anything straight for 40 days, what if I eat the same breakfast for 40 days? Like by day 40, I'm sick of it, right? Even if it was something I loved for the first 30, maybe by day 40, like not getting the same thing from this anymore. So there needs to be some variation, but the practice itself is ongoing. It may take a different form. Um, yeah, yeah. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with stale, when things get stale for you? Or how do you notice things getting stale?
Yeah, so I was even thinking as you were talking, but yeah, what are the small adjustments that we can make? And
Hmm.
yeah, it doesn't need to be a radical shift, although I'm also
Hmm.
sometimes into those. Um, so for me, I mean, not that this is so radical, but for me, sometimes it's looked like instead of doing sitting practice, I do a more formal davening practice. Like, and of course, it doesn't need to be either or, but just for myself, moving to a more cultivation-based practice does something different for my heart. I do
Hmm.
that for a little, and I come back to this practice, but also for myself, even in like I've been sitting 20 minutes before bed. I used to sit in the morning. So changing as we speak about morning and evening, maybe seeing what it's like at a different time of day. I know for myself, I was sitting on a cushion for a while, and then I switched to a meditation bench. And then also felt like a different thing. It took me like at least 40 days to get used to. Um, so yeah, I think finding tweaks is interesting. And also to relate back to what you were reflecting on with the halacha and agada and the intertwining. Even as you were saying this, there's something that I recognize that's a little bit messy or it's a little bit less clear when you're mixing things together. And I understand that
Hmm.
there's something that feels really attractive and good and right for us sometimes to separate. Right? That's sometimes where we find kedusha, holiness, is through that separation and giving everything its space. But I also like this idea of mixing and being okay with a little bit of the messiness and the wildness. And I think a messiness in our practice can also be fruitful. I think it's on my heart to just to share because this
Yeah.
thing up for me in my life that I live in a house with a few different units and we're all
Hmm.
friends. Uh, so this is adventures from community living. I've been tending to things in our backyard, growing plants and inoculating logs with mushrooms. And I'm getting the feedback that things have been looking a little bit messy. And one of my housemates spearheaded this idea of calling in a contractor, bringing in, building a new fence, resodding the backyard. And all of my plants got removed. So my housemates know I'm like a little bit in grief around this still. And the logs with the mushrooms got disposed of. And now it looks very fresh and clean. But I know that there in the wildness there were things that were developing.
Mm.
Uh, so I'm just I think feeling that's Torah that it might be harder to see sometimes, but there is beauty in the mixing of various things that, yeah, it's part of the process of finding our way.
So what do you, yes, thanks for sharing that. So what do you make of that? That's sounds, there's a lot there. Um, I
Yeah,
guess
no,
like,
I think
what's the analog there? Is the kind of like messiness of what, your model there, um, and the kind of cleanness of, what has replaced it? Are you suggesting that those are like doing a dance together? I was thinking that, you know what? I bet that those fungi that you planted, they're going to show up somewhere, there's going to be some mushrooms in there.
the
They will
shiitake
pop up.
mushrooms have to come somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that I was thinking about it as having lots of things going at once,
mm-hmm,
even when it seems like things are not working out, like your practice isn't bearing fruit. Like it took 3 years for the mushrooms to come out. And like letting things also have space on the back burner and to interact with other things. So maybe your davening practice isn't so strong right now, but having other things to fill in the space is good. And it's a little bit harder to keep track of lots of different plants, lots of different practices in our spiritual toolbox.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's a rich and beautiful thing.
We just have a couple of minutes, but Margaret's asking this question, and maybe it came up a little bit earlier about the fruitfulness of boredom. So I'm going to ask you about that. What I'm taking from what you just said in relation to that is, the boredom represents the boredom, which is our description of what's happening, right? Is that space in which, um, uh, things that have maybe germinated can begin to arrive, to come to the surface, right? Then it creates that space for that, and that is the fruitfulness of creating that space. I don't know. What do you have to say on that?
Right. I love that. That boredom
We have
is the space.
so little boredom these days.
Yeah. But we
Go
need
ahead.
space and time for things to, right? Just like you say, to germinate. It's boring waiting for the seed to sprout. I'm feeling that in my garden. But that's necessary
Hmm. Yeah.
and
Um,
beautiful. And
it
yeah,
also there's a little
required.
bit. It's also it introduces that this is so much as practice is really an art that, like you said, like sometimes we try something for a while and then it's time, maybe time to change it up, right? But it also could be which might be the case, time to change it up and do a different form or make an adjustment. But sometimes, because we might feel like I'm bored of this, it's no longer new, right? It's no longer interesting in the same way. Um, but if we stick with it, then and we allow ourselves to be bored, then we might notice things arise and come up that we will be surprised by. That can only be revealed by our willingness to stay with that practice, which is, that's part of what I'm getting from, what you brought today, Aaron, in terms of that text and staying with something as a tamid, doing it continually. I know I get bored here sometimes. Confession, and then I get surprised. Aaron, thank you so much. This was great. Great session. Wonderful way to start the week. Really appreciate it. And also appreciate your sharing that story, which is really powerful. And I will always rewind to Parshat Pinchas a little bit differently because of how you opened us today. So thank you. Thanks to Anmol for holding our space beautifully today, and every one of you for showing up and your incredible dedication to your own practice, to your Tamid being here. So we go. Tomorrow we'll meet our usual time and practice with Allison Cohen, and we look forward to that. So blessings and thanks to you, Aaron, and to each of you.